Welcome to the Super Gamer Podcast. Welcome to the new Super Gamer Podcast, episode 108. Our guest this week is a writer, artist, musician, and game developer, also a STEM teacher. We have Silver Spook, aka Christian Miller. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so you've got games. You've done, I might mispronounce some, but Dysmaton, Terminus Machina. Sorry, did I get that wrong?
Oh, no, that sounds good. I know they're hard made up words, but yeah.
And Neofeud. Neofeud, I guess, would be the most, probably the one you're most well known for. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. That's like Neofeud is like the major flagship official game that it's out and is like you can buy it on Steam and itch and other game sites. Yeah.
Cool. And your game dev career started with Half-Life mods.
Yeah, it goes back a while. I've been doing game dev for multiple decades at this point. Yes, yeah, this makes me feel old, but yeah, Half-Life.
What kind of mods for Half-Life? Because I was a big fan of, Counter-Strike and Day of Defeat and all that.
Oh yeah. Shoot, I don't like none of the ones that I worked on are were very big. I'm not sure if there are even any sites up at this point that still feature them. Probably the biggest mod that you can still check out that I worked on isn't actually a Half-Life mod. I did play a lot of Counter-Strike though. I did play Counter-Strike, Day of Defeat, Natural Selection, Desert Crisis. These are more obscure, but the most well-known mod that I've created was called the Terminus Machina one that you listed that's for Deus Ex. Which is an ancient 20-year-old game as well, the original from 2000, and yeah, that's where I got into game making.
Yeah, Deus Ex, your favorite game, unless that has changed recently.
Yeah, it's still the game I've like reinstalled the most overall. My dead x64, my Pentium 3s, the Windows 7s and Windows 8, 9s, and 10s, and I've reinstalled that game like on every system I've ever had. I spent a lot of I spent the most time playing that game of all games. If you look at my like Steam or just my total hours gaming, that's played and replayed the game so many times. Yeah, I'd say it's one of my favorite games. It's very inspirational. It's very seminal and like me thinking about what was possible in games like early on. I'm also a big cyberpunk fan. Dark sci-fi, dystopian sci-fi, and cyberpunk is like my bread and butter, my primary genre, I guess. And so Deus Ex was one of those games that really kind of made me think about actually really think about getting into game dev more seriously. Because before that, I'd only been dabbling in like Half-Life mods, like I said. And then with Deus Ex, it was like, oh, I think I want to really do this. And I got like a degree in programming, and the rest is history.
Did you replay Deus Ex this past December? Because that's something you do every year, right?
I did. To be honest, like it is like if you go back and play it now, it can feel a bit dated. It was known as one of the first immersive sim type games. I mean, Warren Spector is currently still working on them. He's the creator of Deus Ex, and he was working on System Shock 3. Apparently, that might be shelved for a bit. But yeah, I'm constantly replaying it, and I'm playing a lot of Doom as well. I'm replaying a lot of Doom. Actually, just recently did a panel with John Romero, the co-founder of id Software, and yeah, and the original Doom demon and Doom level designer. John Romero. He actually also happens to be indigenous. He's Yaqui and Cherokee. I'm Native Hawaiian, and so we were on an indigenous people's game developers panel recently, and he's a really nice guy. He's a really cool guy, and Doom also was major inspiration. I spent probably about as much time playing Half-Life, Doom, and Deus Ex together, but maybe Deus Ex a little extra.
You've been very open about, you've spoken a lot about how your childhood has certainly shaped what you make games about and what you write about and that kind of stuff. I guess I'm curious, if you can give us a bit of if you can tell us about that. But do you think that your childhood and how you grew up, like, did that lead you to cyberpunk, or was it sort of like you were a cyberpunk fan and now that's sort of the lens that you tell your childhood story from?
Yeah, it's it can be kind of hard to untangle all of these threads. But Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen some of the backstory and history. If there's something about Silver Spook games specifically, I mean, we're not like a huge, we're definitely not id Software or anything close to that, and definitely no Blizzard or EA. But if there's anything about the brand, it's that I try to, and mostly it's me as a one-person dev, and I would love to be larger than an indie, solo or very small indie studio, but I try to tell stories, right, that are very personal, are like reflections of my personal life in some way, history, my experiences, and that are like, at least somewhat. They have to be entertaining, of course, because we're, if people are, spending money to be entertained in an interactive form for some period of time, they need to like be engaged. They have to be having fun, laughing, crying, being moved by the stories, just really, riveted to the plot, or, just like Doom is like your adrenaline is going. If you're not engaged, then we're not doing our job as storytellers, as game designers, or any kind of, art and entertainment creators. But I also want the games to be instilled with, something, and that's actually, I take that lesson from both John and Warren Spector. I'm constantly going back and watching old videos. One of them is, if you're Warren Spector's one is like, if you're not going to make something that is never been done before, it's kind of like, what's even the point? So it's really, I took that lesson to heart. So my personal experiences growing up, to answer your question, you'll notice I have a tendency to spiral out into a variety of.
Please do.
I tend to do that, but it's that's part of the way that I tell stories, which are very surreal, and they're very. It's hard to you'll find it's hard for me to untangle all of this, but yeah. So back to my personal life, I grew up as I said, I was born in Hawaii as a. I'm actually mixed in a lot of different. I have a lot of ancestry. I'm Hawaiian, Asian, Caucasian, and all these different things. It's a very complicated place, Hawaii, but. My upbringing was I'm from a very let's just say the not so nice side of the coconut trees. It's the poorer areas. For being frank, it's the ghetto basically. It's like the Oakland, or it's like the Camden, New Jersey, if you're from the East Coast of the United States. It's an area that is has a very high level of homelessness, very high level of poverty, and but when people think of Hawaii, you think of coconut trees and beautiful white sand beaches, and that's the marketing that that's our industry. I would suppose, along with the military, of course, but that's another story. But so my upbringing was very much in this very poor area, but my father taught at a private school because like he wanted us to be able to go there. It's very, there's a lot of very wealthy people in Hawaii. There's Larry Ellison, Elon, let's say Mr. Bezos. They all own the richest people in the world own large pieces of Hawaii, but then there's also very poor people. And so I was one of those people who was going to school with the very well-off people in a upscale private school, because my father taught there, and it's $20,000 a year. Which I barely make that now, to send one child there. And so it was a very weird upbringing, because I was in the back of this valley, surrounded by a lot of Pacific Islanders, a lot of people of color, a lot of immigrants who are disproportionately making up the people who serve in who serve the Mai Tais, right, who dance the dances for the tourists, who drive the tour buses. They're living in this region that I'm from, but then we're going to the school where the richest people on the planet, billionaires' children, go. And so that's a very, they're showing up in limos. I'm showing up in an ancient old Toyota Corolla, And so it's a very surreal experience. Like it's kind of like going. I mean, if you know your cyberpunk, let me think of the cyberpunk 2077 equivalent. It's like it's like going to school with the children of the Militech CEO, and then coming back to the worst part of the sprawl at night, or Night City. It's like going to the Hamptons, going to school in the nicest part of Greenwich, Connecticut, or something, and then coming back to Camden, New Jersey. I mean, that's a long train ride, I know, but that was my upbringing. Right? It was very surreal because I would be the kids in my neighborhood would play dodge the rock because they didn't have enough money to afford balls, and that's all they had, and there was no rules because people live 20 to a house. You're eating like ramen every night because that's all people can afford. But when we go to school, dodgeball was illegal or is outlawed. It was banned because there were too many lawsuits between the parents. If one child, everyone is lowering up because everyone's millionaires and billionaires. So it was a very weird. You go there and you come back and you be in two different worlds, like completely different worlds. And also I was Native Hawaiian and I was like the only brown kid basically at this school, or one of a tiny handful. So that's its own weird reality, and so and weird experience. Anyway, so that all those experiences led me to later when I grew up, I studied computer science. Right, I was really into games. I played a lot of video games. I played a lot of Mario, and I played Sonic the Hedgehog early on, Contra, and of course Half-Life Deus Ex later on in high school. So I spent a lot of time playing video games, and then I became a computer programmer, got a degree in computer science, and when I graduated, I had this idea, like all kids do, I'm going to be a rock star, and then, well, maybe that's not working out. Maybe I'll be like a game audio designer for EA or some big company, and then it's like, well, maybe I'll just try to survive and like get a job teaching STEM. And I did work for some game companies in Hawaii, a few different ones. A couple of them were run basically by multi-hundred millionaires or billionaires, because that's who lives in Hawaii and starts game companies. But then I kind of was like, I want to. So I started teaching kind of STEM to kids, but I wanted to kind of give back to the community that I was from. So I was teaching science, tech, engineering, and math, and I was doing like social services. I was never like fully like a social worker or specifically like caseworker, but I was like teaching the competency-based diploma program for basically impoverished, at-risk youth, kids who had dropped out of high school and were looking to get a degree, similar to a GED, but it's kind of like it's like a 6-month accelerated program to like help, kids that are getting into a lot of bad behaviors. Maybe they have done some prison time, or juvenile, have been in the carceral system, and they're trying to like trying to help those kids get back on their feet, get them like a basic life skills, like how to apply for a job, how to like stay out of negative behaviors, drugs and gangs and such. And then also was teaching STEM at the same time for the younger kids. And so those experiences, working with the community, the impoverished community that I was from, and those experiences combined with my childhood upbringing, I was like, I can't be, and I was still trying to work for some of these game companies, but it was just, I work for example, I worked for a game company that was like, the Texas Hold'em or the Windows Accessories Solitaire, the game that everybody has on their Windows. And it was like, you can choose to, the biggest creative decision that I ever had, at that, working on like those games was, would you like to put the suicide, the suicide jack, in the deck of cards? Should the knife be on the left or the right side of the head? Just like inconsequential things that I was like, I have a lot more stories to tell than just making these tiny little Flappy Bird clones, or just I don't know. I wasn't feeling very creatively fulfilled, or I was just kind of bored. Anyways, and also like I had a lot more to do. Anyways, I'll end it here. This is how I answer these questions. Is not really in one complete, not directly, but the way I came to Silver Spook Games and Neofeud and Terminus Machina. Terminus Machina I made while I was working in the STEM and these social services, working with those kids, and Neofeud as well. And Neofeud is the main character is a cyborg social worker who is trying to do. He's working with ex-con robots and failed eugenics experiments that are like half wolf, half human hybrids pumped out by giant corporations. It's a kind of it's very dystopian. It's very like it's very William Gibson-esque. If you are a literary cyberpunk reader, it's very uh, District 9, Chappie. Those are like the Neil Blomkamp movies. Were inspirational, and it's like all the cyberpunk dystopian worlds kind of smashed together. Cyberpunk 2077, of course, is inspired by Gibson's work, but and a lot of cyberpunk. And so it's like taking all of that, and like the main character is a social, trying to help kids, trying to help like discarded, failed robot children who are treated as second class citizens, like stay out of gangs, off of drugs. There's like ex-military hippie anti-war terminators, so they like went and fought for the U.S. military, and now they hate the military-industrial complex because they figured out they're fighting on the wrong side, and they got their legs shot off. Asked to put down leftist uprisings in Germany in this fictional world, and so it's a lot of comedy, but also it's simultaneously like comedic and satirical, and it takes all of the tropes of James Cameron, Skynet, and there's literal there's like Matrix-like agents, there's squiddies, and but it's like recontextualizing all of that in a way that's embedding it in my experiences and things that I think are not really being discussed in cyberpunk and people's lives that you don't see. There's often like a main agent, like there's a JC Denton, right? He's like fighting, he's working for the United Nations Counterterrorism Coalition, right? You've got the Neo is saving the world, but then what about all the people that are just like trying to survive in the ghettos, And so that's kind of that was kind of the. Anyway, that's a long answer, but that's kind of how I came to Neophyte, Terminus Cyberstar. And the Silver Spook games are kind of like trying to tell stories that are entertaining, but also like have some relevance to the world, to the have some political valence to them, and also our personal stories. And yeah, there you go.
Well, one thing I find very interesting about Neophyte, so that came out in 2017. It's set in 2033, but you have said, like personally, when I look at neo-noir and cyberpunk and that kind of stuff, I guess I assume it's the future. But you have said both that, there's a lot of dystopian things going on in the world today, and society is very good at hiding that kind of stuff. But you also said in a recent panel discussion that for many indigenous people, like surviving in a dystopian post-apocalypse, well, that is now.
Yeah. I know which one you're referring to. Yeah. I did say that it is. I don't want to say that I can. I feel like somebody has said that before, and I don't want to accidentally take credit for it. I think I might have recontextualized that, but basically, yes. It's. I think it's the apocalypse for indigenous people. The apocalypse already happened. It happened 500 years ago, and so specifically from an indigenous lens, because sometimes. It's kind of weird because I have, when you are somebody who is, if you're indigenous, or if you're somebody that is at least partially raised in a culture that is, let's just say it's at odds with American, Western, or whatever the main culture is, in this case, it'd be the US, right, that in Hawaii. So I kind of have it's almost like having two different minds, and it kind of depends on, they kind of talk to each other sometimes, but from one perspective, I was raised, I was kind of talking about how I was raised I believe in that panel, I was also talking about how I was raised to be a Goldman Sachs high frequency trading algorithm programmer, basically somebody who is working, I almost became a bank programmer for a very large investment bank, and that's part of Terminus Machina, is kind of like taking all the time I spent studying how to sell subprime mortgages into people's 401ks, and then not doing that, but then you taking that time and energy and then putting that into making a Deus Ex mod called Terminus Machina, and it deals a lot with stocks, and so the apocalypse, to get to your question, so it's kind of like Terminus Machina is also a very apocalyptic, or I call it in situ apocalyptic game. It's like the dystopia that happens, or what people view as the end of the world, right? Armageddon. Don't Look Up is a movie that recently came out, right, starring Leo DiCaprio, about what's the future end of the world that's coming, that's not here yet. But for a lot of people that are alive, if you just as an example, Hawaiian language, right, was banned when I was born. It was illegal to speak that language. There were less than 100 Hawaiian language speakers in the 80s. So the United States, and this is just a little bit of history that I sometimes bring up, which is that the U.S. when they occupied Hawaii back in the late 1800s, in a coup, essentially, they banned the language, they banned the culture, they redid all of the history, and left a lot of things out. And so that was kind of like an apocalyptic event. It's been a slow motion apocalypse of removing all of the attempting to remove, like many other indigenous peoples in the United States, like the US and in Canada, attempting to remove all of the indigenous ways and culture that are, let's just say, inconvenient for the places like the United States and like Canada. And so that was a kind of an apocalyptic. It was like I hadn't even realized that that's what was happening while I was even working on things like Terminus and Neofeud. But only like in the last 10 years or less, possibly, I'm like really understanding this is why things are the way that they are, and that part of my, in the Hawaiian word is kuleana, but part of my responsibility is at least to try to speak about these things, because no one else will. Even my own parents, they don't understand. My parents don't speak any Hawaiian because it was banned, even though they are. And so that in itself is a kind of apocalyptic event. And so I think a lot of the games that I produce are kind of like, Terminus Machina takes place basically now. Neofeud takes place like, in the very near future. But why are we we don't really, I mean, yes, things could obviously get worse, and they could be like literally Mad Max or Fallout level of apocalypse, but things are bad enough for a lot of people. And if you're like I don't know, in an actual war zone, like, if you're in Afghanistan or you're in Iraq, things could be a lot. That's even more apocalyptic. And or in a global South country that's got extreme levels of poverty, etc., even beyond what we experience here. And so so I think a lot of that idea of what's apocalypse is what is apocalyptic, what is dystopian, is something that I'm often thinking about and playing with, and the Neofeud 2 is dealing with a lot of like that kind of thing in like how the dystopia, what is dystopian is very much in the, it's in the eye of the beholder, and it's in the experiences and the history of the storyteller. And it definitely has a particular veil. It has a very particular edge to it, depending on who's telling the story. So there's a lot of talk about how the Orientalism of cyberpunk, which was coming out of the yellow peril of the 80s, when William Gibson, who I interviewed him at one point as well. I think it's on my YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. The godfather of cyberpunk. And I liked Gibson. I met my wife. I always joke, I met William Gibson and my wife in a park in Vancouver at the same time. And, William Gibson was taken, so I married her instead. So, but anyways, I shouldn't say that too. My wife is also Canadian. So, she's from the same British Columbia. Well, he's technically from the US, but he's an expat. But anyways, but I don't know if I'm not sure how much of that he realizes it, but it is kind of like a lot of the dystopian things that he was writing about is also part of a particular place that the US and its culture, I mean, conservative and liberal, were in the 80s, which was very worried about a rising Japan and rising Asia generally. And so that colors the dystopia as well, just as another way of looking at that idea of like what is apocalyptic, what is dystopian, etc. Anyway, I could keep going on that forever. So
you mentioned Neofeud 2, which I'm going to get into very soon, but a bit more on Neofeud 1. More than 76,000 words of voice-acted dialogue, and you really agonized over the language, like, should there be swears, and if there are swears, like, what would they be like in a future like this? What would the slang kind of be? Can you kind of tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. The language. It was a thing. I mean, I don't know. It was my first. Neofeud was my first. I call it the flagship masthead Silver Spook game because Uh, here's another pro tip for all the prospective game devs out there. Don't mortgage your house and tell your wife, I'm going to go be a game dev now because, unless they're very nice and very Canadian, like, I mean, well, like my wife, I shouldn't say very Canadian, but if they're, unless they're extremely nice and very generous with you, they're going to be gone, and it's not, I mean, that's a joke to say that it's very much not a thing that you want to, you know, um, just it's a lot of people want to be indie game devs, and the success is not guaranteed, and it is a lot of work. Making games, period, is a lot of work. It's a little bit less work now compared to we have to push our Dell 486 uphill both ways in the snow in the 1990s. Just to you have to program everything in almost assembly language at a very low level to make games. But now you can drag and drop a lot of things in Unity, and you can have a game almost not quite turnkey, but it's a lot easier. But it still is work, and it still is work to get the game noticed in a very what do you call it, saturated. It's well, there's a lot of people making games. Let's say that. So I was like, I wasn't really sure what exactly I wanted. you know, um, I didn't know anything about marketing. That's another difficulty when you're a small studio. I didn't have a publisher. I was like, I'm sick of working here at this, big AAA ish game company and just being ground by crunch and all that nasty stuff and not having any creative freedom. So I'm gonna go start a game company. And I'm gonna, part of my thought process was I don't want to be like a 60-year-old Goldman Sachs stock trader with doing programming for this huge bank, and then going like, with my wife gone and like Johnny Mnemonic, in the 1990s movie, having the roast beef sandwich and and the expensive hooker and the cold Mexican beer, but then wondering, being a soulless shell of a person, wondering what it would have been like to have made like actually relevant and important indie games. I mean, there's a, and I didn't want to like regret the rest of my life not doing that. So I told my wife, I said, hey, can we like, I'm like so burnt out at a lot of these jobs, and can we try this? And so she agreed. And anyway, so anyway, that's not really answering the question. So the language is very much, I was like, oh, should I have swears? I don't know. I don't, what am I gonna do? I don't wanna like waste my I don't want to get in trouble. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what exactly I was thinking, but I was thinking about other IPs. I was like, how do they handle swears in like a Battlestar, Galactica? I think they do a lot of fracking in that show. It's a sci-fi show, Battlestar Galactica. What was the other ones? Drek is in I think that's in the Cyberpunk 2077 universe. They're saying Drek and Tremor all the time, so they can be hard people, hard boiled, but still family friendly. I'm not the biggest Cyberpunk 2020 player, although the director of Terminus, Machina sequel, Terminus Cyberstar, is a huge Cyberpunk 2020 fan. Anyways, so I was just like trying to think about words to use, and the language though, the Neofeud, Neofeud is a very it's a unusual game. It's a very surreal game, and it's just definitely not hard sci-fi. It's very I'm trying to think of a good comparison that people might get. It has Disco Elysium characteristics. It has it's like Douglas Adams. It's like Monty Python. It's a point and click adventure game, and those were pretty wacky. They were kind of silly, very comedic, like Monkey Island and Space Quest is like that might be the closest in tone. These are like older games though, so not everybody might know those. And so Neofeud is like, I was like, I want to do something that's like, in the way that Hitchhiker's Guide is, the Douglas Adams book is like, and movie is like making fun and making jokes and like riffing on and satirizing Star Trek and Asimov and all science fiction, right? It's like but also it's making a commentary on the present, right? So I wanted to do that with cyberpunk genre as in general. It was kind of one of the major impetuses. So a lot of it's kind of joking. Like there's all of the major a lot of the major families and entities in the game Like there's the X Terminator. The EX 800 is the Terminator. Like he's like, and who is also a hippie Terminator. There's some things that are like they're almost, but they're not quite. There's like super rich families like the Clington Bush with a BUSCH. And the language is like I think they say flack instead of the F bomb. Although some people have said why do they say they say the SHIT word but they don't say the F
You're
bomb.
allowed to swear here. It's okay.
Okay. I wasn't sure, but yeah. Anyways, they say fuck, but they don't say shit. And I don't know. There are some decisions that I can't really explain, but I did worry a little bit about yeah. But in retrospect, I'm like I don't know how much. Yeah, I still don't know if I made the right decision. I think a lot of this is you put the game out and you just see what sticks and you see if people like it. And some people don't like certain things about the game. Some people don't like the art style. Some people don't like. I don't know. It's like, well, what I have to read all of this, and I'm like, well, this is not Overwatch, so I'm sorry. There's a lot of text here, but it is in my defense, 76,000 words is not even close to Disco Elysium's 1 million. Also, I had voice acting on release day, so I have that over the Estonian devs. Anyways, yeah.
You mentioned a couple things there. You mentioned that you knew nothing about marketing. And you mentioned how you were kind of burnt out of the regular grind of the 9 to 5 job you're not interested in. But you continue to market. From 2017, this game came out, and you continue to market Neofeud pretty heavily, like on social media and wherever. Is there any fatigue setting in as far as that goes?
Yeah. So marketing wise. Another tip I'm often bringing it up is that when you release the game, I recommend people release a game, and then start and finish. I think I think William Gibson also told me that. He said, "Oh, you want to be a writer?" Because I was trying to be a writer too. I actually, well, technically I am a writer. All of Neofeud is. I also was the writer, but I also released like short. I also release fiction in other contexts. You must start and you must finish your science fiction stories, your cyberpunk games, and anything else. You have to start and finish. It seems like a very weird lesson, but it's actually very important because it seems like a simple, like non thing, but you have to start and you have to finish. The finishing part is really important because when you finish the game and you put it out, then you realize how much actual work it is to do like the marketing, or if you don't want to call it marketing because it's too slimy, has corporateness all over it, you can call it getting your game seen and the visibility or whatever you want, people discovering your thing, right? Whether that's the SEO, the algorithm. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you're doing today. I mean, everyone publishing books, I mean, getting podcasts out there, anything you're doing, that's like any kind of creative work, and sometimes even not, you have to kind of you're expected to, like, of course, especially as an indie, be your own, promoter, and so that does take a lot of work, and it is not there's not really a manual that you can just pick this thing up and go, this is how marketing works. And if you go, I probably shouldn't say this to I have a lot of friends that are professors, and they go, well, I mean, if you go get a degree in marketing and in promotion, I mean, you might come out with it, but I mean, I don't know how it's going to help you if the entire industry and the scene has changed. So it's a very tricky thing. It's a very there's a lot more luck involved in it than people will admit. But at the same time, it is a thing where you have to. I mean, at least in my experience, I mean, unless you have like millionaire and billionaire, like unless you have neo-feudal, like diamond encrusted crown wearing royalty parents who can buy you the front page of Steam, itch, and the #1 ranked Google search when you type in science fiction game, you're not gonna. It's gonna be it's gonna be a lot of luck. It's gonna be a lot of time and just organically trying to build the audience, and trying to figure out where your game is targeted. Especially if it's an indie game. I mean, if you're putting out Battlefield, if you're putting out Overwatch, like I said, if you're putting out, I don't know, Elden Ring, things that are massive, it's like putting out the Batman, right? Who's not going to know what that is? Everyone's going to know what that is. But if you're a niche, a smaller indie game or a smaller indie or medium-sized game studio, you have to kind of think more about okay, who exactly is this going to play this? Because it's not going to be all 7 billion people are not going to play this. Maybe like, a million, 2 million if you get lucky. Who is this tailored to? These certain retro enthusiasts. And so I'm constantly thinking about that when I'm doing this promotion. Like you're asking me about. I do have the social media sites that I do. One of them is more like political activism and it's my personal opinions on things. Another one is more games related. Silver Spook Games is like specifically just putting out games related stuff. It is. I can't do it all day long, but I try to put out at least a little bit, and doing the panels and doing the podcast, and a lot of it blends together. So like I speak about issues related to indigenous peoples, related to Hawaii, related to specific environmental and other concerns, and then also I promote the game. And the Silver Spook brand is very much like I said. It's kind of not the games are. I want them to be making people think and moving the world in a positive direction, and they're not. There's people who say, we don't want any politics in our games, but I vehemently disagree with that. That's a thing that's true, that's possible, and so the games are always loaded in some way, and so that they all kind of blend a little bit together, but at the same time, and so some of it is just I'm doing political. Activism, but then also it is always also about also promoting the game. And Silver Spook Games is more directly just sharing the game. And do you like cyberpunk games? Did you like, I don't know, do you like Monkey Island? Do you like Cyberpunk 2077? You might like this one. And so that's kind of an ongoing thing. It is work. It is work. And if I could pay somebody a salary to just promote for me, and I could clone myself 3 times. One of them works on the games. One of them just does, the art. One does the programming and writing, and another Silver Spook, 3.0 does the marketing stuff. That would be great, but we don't have that reality. So, so marketing. Anyways, yeah.
As far as starting and finishing, it's a good segue to how far along is Neofeud 2?
Far along is Neofeud 2. Neofeud 2 is, I keep every year. I'm like, I'm gonna finish it this year, and I'm not done with it. I'm sorry to all my Patreon supporters. I keep promising that it's gonna be done in this year, but it's really a game that's there's a lot of reasons why it's not quite done yet. I am at this point. I'm like, I do really, 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 really want to get it done this year. It's been like 5 years since Neofeud 1, so I'm like, I really do want to get it done. But one thing is like, we had to move. We moved from my home city, where which is what Neofeud is based on. It's a very the area that I'm from is a very cyberpunk dystopian, hellscapey sort of place, and so part of it was just unlivable, and we would not be able to start. We wouldn't have been able to run Silver Spook Games because of the cost of living. It's literally, I believe, it's the most economically unlivable place in all of North America, all of the U.S. and Canada together. It's Honolulu. It's a very well kept secret. The amount they pay you versus how much the rent and cost of food, etc. is. But so we couldn't live there. So part of it was moving. It's taking a little bit longer. And then also we've been trying to. I've been doing a lot of having to. This actually ties back in, right? Starting and finishing the thing, which was Neofeud 1, and then marketing right after you're done. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just finish Neofeud and then I'll just do Neofeud 2. But it's like, well, not really, because you're not. Neofeud 1 isn't done. Now you've released it. Now you have to promote it for the rest of your life. So it's like, oh yeah, that's gonna take a good amount of time. That takes like at least a few hours. Just trying to go back and forth and dealing with people. It's like, oh my god, this game crashed on my. I have a Windows XP laptop from 2008 and it doesn't work on this and that. And I got to deal with just all this other business. Because I basically do everything on that. So that the business stuff, the responding to people's bug reports, all that other stuff takes time as well. So that takes time away from working on the game. And also I'm a husband and a dad. Of 2 kids, and then we also teach from home. So I also have teaching responsibilities on top of which I love to do that, and I love to my wife's amazing. I mean, she put up with me making all these silly indie game thingy. So so she's so that's all time, right? It's like so that's taking a little bit of time. But anyway, that's all excuses for why the game isn't done. But Neophyte 2 is I'm trying my best to get it done in this year. I'm like at this point I'm like it's bigger than Neophyte 1. Like it might be longer. I'm not sure, but I'm spending more time on the art, and so then I'm trying to because a lot of people were like I like the punk. Looking back, like Neophyte One is it's very much like art was one of the last things I learned how to do. So so people have complained that it's like it feels like mache or things feel inconsistent, and in some senses that's true. In another sense, like I did do the writing, the music, the art, the programming, the animating, and half the voice acting. So come on, give me a break. But also it is like I was thinking about that a lot, and I think I started going maybe for Neophyte 2, I'm going to try to have the art. I'm going to try to work on the art more, spend more time on it. But the problem was like when I was doing that, like it was, it took a lot more time to get it to the level of polish that I wanted it to. So I'm having to kind of just, that's taken more time than I would have liked it to. I do want to get the game done like in this year. So I'm just trying to hammer out the entire script, the entire storyline so that I can get all the pieces together. I have like basically most of the backgrounds done, and now I just have to take the characters and all the moving parts and give them all their lines. And it does take a lot of trial and error. Actually, I stream the development sometimes. Sometimes some people I actually like test it out. I'll like read scenes from the game sometimes in the middle of it. I don't really tell everyone. I just start doing it, and I'll just be like, "Hey, this is a scene from Neophyte 2," and I see who laughs in the chat, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that must be working." Or not. And then some people are like, I like learning how to game dev while watching this. Sometimes it's slower, like not all of it's fun. Like when I'm like hunting for lost semicolons and brackets in my code, that's not the most fun thing. But it is like it can be a long and lonely process sometimes, especially if you're a solo dev like I am right now. So I sometimes I'll just do that. I'll read lines to my wife and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this references? And so that's a lot of the process of putting the game together. And it's not the way I do it is not really recommend. It's a weird process when you're doing it by yourself as well. You have a lot of freedom to quickly change things. Like, oh, that scene isn't working. We're going to just like throw that away. We're going to bring this back in. It can be harder when you have a big team and you have to give everybody like a game plan, and you don't want to like waste, a month of 20 artists' time going, oh no, we're not going to have any Terminator like characters. And so those are both like benefits of being a small or one person team, but then also it can be a lot, and it can take a little bit longer. And of course you have limitations, like you can't make a big 3D game, but I have multiple games in the fire right now. So I'm actually working on another game that is a bigger team, and I give them a bunch of writing, and then they pump out a game for me, and it's really nice.
Doing comedy on Twitch, that's actually come up on the show before. I imagine it's got to be hard to gauge feedback that way, because it's not just like you don't actually get to see someone live, like like they need to actively type out LOL or something.
Yeah, it can be tricky. It can be tricky. I mostly listen. Sometimes I just listen to see if my wife is laughing in the other room. She's often like monitoring the chat, and it's probably not the most accurate way to do statistical joke quality analysis of your games. But yeah, it is. Sometimes I'll just do it just to read it. It's like that's one thing we did in programming class. I think in college, it was like read your code if you get stuck and you can't figure out bugs, or read your code to a dog, and they have like a dog, in some not every it's something that I don't know if they still do this. They probably don't, but read your code to someone else or read your whatever you're doing, because then while you're reading it out loud, it can like reveal things that when you're stuck in your head thinking about it, not there. And so anyways, but I'm not a Twitch comedian per se, although sometimes I'm being silly often, but yeah, good luck to all the Twitch comedians out there.
And I'll finish off with another streaming question. Do you still live stream your painting at all?
Uh, um, no, I began doing streams with doing art stuff. I'm like really slow, and I'm not the. I feel very self-conscious about it because I'm not that good, and I take a long time to paint. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do that, and sometimes I'm just um, streaming whatever happens to pop into my head related to a variety of topics. Yeah, if you tune in, I wouldn't say I'll be like I'm gonna paint today specifically, but it's not a thing that's happening every day because it is a painstaking thing, and I paint in an ancient version of Photoshop, and most of the time I'm just like losing my Photoshop layers, so that's just embarrassing. So.
All right, well, people can get NeoFeud on itch.io, on Steam. Keep an eye out for NeoFeud 2. You can find Silver Spook Games Twitter, Facebook, on Twitch, silverspookgames.blogspot.com. Anywhere else people can find you, or what should they look out for?
Yeah. So Silver Spook Games on Twitter is my the games account. Dynasty and Silver. I'm sorry. And Silver Spook Guy is like my personal account for just things related to my personal opinions on things and like speaking on indigenous issues and that kind of thing. And the other game is Terminus. I don't know if I updated the website. I apologize, but I'm behind on that website. Terminus Cyberstar. It's like Terminus. Cyberstar is the sequel to the Deus Ex Total Conversion mod that I made. That's the one that's a larger team is working on that. And that one is coming out sometime in the near future. I'm not sure exactly when, but you can follow them at Terminus C on Twitter. Yeah.
Silver Spook, aka Christian Miller. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.